I'm Jared Taylor. My organization, American Renaissance, has just published an updated version of our report, The Color of Crime. It is the definitive account of racial differences in crime rates. It's written by economist and researcher Edwin Rubenstein, and it's based on the best available government statistics. The information is clearly presented in graphs and tables, and I believe this report is irrefutable. It's a perfect gift for your liberal friends. Many people believe that the only reason blacks are more likely than whites to be arrested is because of racist police. In fact, the evidence suggests very strongly that the police simply arrest people who commit crime, and people of different races commit crime at very different rates. Many crimes have witnesses. For robberies and rapes, for example, the victim usually gets a good look at the perp. And if 70% of the people who are mugged tell the police that the mugger was black, and 70% of the people arrested for mugging are black, the police are probably just doing their job. This graph is a comparison for many crimes of the percentage of perps witnesses say were black and the percentage of blacks who were arrested for these same crimes. The dark lines are witness reports and the lighter lines are arrests. The tallest lines, highlighted with the red dot, are robberies, muggings. Witnesses say that more than 70% of muggers are black. But as you can see from the shorter, lighter line next to it, not even 60% of the people arrested for mugging are black. Now look at assaults at the very left. Again, witnesses say nearly 40% of the perps are black, but just over only 30% of the people the police arrest are black. Look at kidnappings, forcible sex offenses including rape, and non-forcible sex offenses. In every case, police are arresting fewer blacks than we would expect from what witnesses tell us. And remember, the main witness, the victim, can almost always tell you the race of the attacker. For some crimes, slightly more blacks are arrested than you would expect from witness reports. However, when you add up crimes in all categories, the black arrest rate is 14% lower than the percentage reported by witnesses. And these data are from more than 6,000 police departments representing 29% of the U.S. population. That's a huge representative sample. Police arrest criminals, and if they arrest more blacks than Asians, say, it is because blacks commit more crime. How much more? Believe it or not, nobody knows. It's impossible to get national figures by race, since the FBI lumps Hispanics in with whites. Here is Daniel Guzman, wanted by the FBI. The FBI thinks he's white. And here's Napoleon Castro, another white man, according to the FBI. Many cities, however, distinguish between blacks, whites, Hispanics, and Asians. Take New York City. This table shows you the rate at which people of different races are arrested for different crimes. We saw earlier that arrest rates are a good indicator of who's committing crime. Look at murder over on the left. The white arrest rate is set to 1. You can see that in 2014, blacks in New York City were 30.9 times more likely than whites to be arrested for murder. We call that a multiple of 30.9. Look over at the very right. When it comes to the crime of shooting, in which someone fires a bullet that hits someone, blacks were 98.4 times more likely than whites to be arrested. That is a multiple of nearly 100. The arrow means that the black bar should run completely off the chart. And notice the pattern. For all these crimes, blacks are arrested at higher rates than Hispanics, and Hispanics are arrested at higher rates than Asians. These arrest rates don't mean that the NYPD hates blacks and Hispanics and loves Asians and whites. They mean that a hugely disproportionate number of criminals in New York City are either black or Hispanic. Here's a different way to think about it. Let's imagine an all-white New York City. If the additional whites committed crimes at exactly the same rate as the whites who live there now, do you know by how much crime would fall? Murder would drop by 91%, robbery by 81%, and shootings would decline by 97%. You could lay off most of the police force. If other major American cities were all white, you would get similarly dramatic reductions in crime. But there's something else that New York's statistics tell us. This table shows arrest multiples for different versions of the same crime, with the more serious versions above the less serious ones. Rape is more serious than groping someone. Felonious assault is with a weapon, whereas pushing someone is misdemeanor assault. Petty larceny includes shoplifting a donut. Please note that in every case, the less serious offenses have lower arrest multiples for non-whites than the more serious offenses. This is yet more evidence that police are not biased. Why is that? Because the police have a lot of latitude in whether to make an arrest for less serious crimes. If someone is lying on the sidewalk bleeding and a man is running off with a knife in his hand, the police are going to make an arrest. If they see you push someone, they may have better things to do than to arrest you. And that's the point. If police were biased against blacks, they might arrest every black who pushed someone or who shoplifted a donut and look the other way when whites did those things. That would make the multiples very high. Instead, they are lower. Police are probably just doing their jobs. Or maybe they are deliberately looking the other way with blacks, because arresting blacks for petty crime may be more bother than it's worth. According to some studies, blacks are 9 times more likely than whites to resist arrest. Better just let them eat that donut. So if the police aren't biased, the courts are, right? Wrong. This graph shows the percentage of people arrested for various crimes who are black and the percentages of prisoners who are black. The dark bars are arrests and the light bars are prisoners. If the entire process from arrest to prison to release were biased, you'd expect the light bars, which represent prisoners, to be a lot taller. Some are a little taller, but some are shorter. And the total balances out just as you would expect if the system is fair. Criminals are in prison because they're criminals, not because of bias. I'll mention just a few more eye-opening facts in this report. Every year, there are about 600,000 acts of interracial criminal violence involving blacks and whites. A black is the attacker, and a white is the victim 85% of the time. That means that any given black is about 27 times more likely to attack a white than the other way around. 27 times more likely. And then there are police shootings, which we hear so much about. During 2015, the police shot and killed 990 people. Blacks were about 2.5 times more likely than whites to be killed by police, and Hispanics were about 25% more likely. Only 93 of the 990 people killed by the police were unarmed. For that very small number, blacks were 5.6 times more likely than whites to be shot. But as we saw, blacks are involved in violent crime at much higher rates than whites. And they were 4.5 times more likely than people of other races to kill a police officer. Also, as I noted earlier, they are more likely to resist arrest. And that's exactly the kind of behavior that leads to police shootings. Again, it's pretty clear that the police are just doing their jobs, not hunting down blacks, as some would have you believe. Now, murder is a real problem for blacks, For decades, it has been far and away the leading cause of death for black men aged 15 to 34. And the Department of Justice reports that 93% of blacks are killed by other blacks. Only about 0.5% of the blacks who are killed are unarmed blacks killed by police. 0.5%. It is this tiny number that the Black Lives Matter movement cares about, not the 5,000 or so blacks who are killed every year by other blacks. But I have just skimmed the surface. There are sections in this report on immigrant crime rates, the effect of incarceration rates on crime, why it is wrong to think drug arrests are racially biased, and a lot more. You can order a copy of The Color of Crime at amren.com or just download a free PDF. If you care about the facts, read this report. Thanks for watching.